Steve Hilton, what do you make of what you've seen?
Evan, honestly, I think this is one of the worst national humiliations we've seen since we went cap in hand to the IMF in the 1970s. I mean, forget about the terrible things that the Chinese regime is doing at home, the vicious political oppression and the violent physical abuse of women. Just look at what they're doing internationally, militarily threatening their neighbors, empire building in Africa, and on a daily basis stealing property from businesses and governments all around the world through their relentless cyber attacks. I mean, the truth is that China is a rogue state, just as bad as Russia or Iran. And I just don't understand why we're sucking up to them rather than standing up to them as we should be.
Well, maybe it's because we have a living to earn, right? And we want some investment and we want trade. And this is a country you can't ignore.
I think that is such a false choice. The argument is that this is some kind of choice between squishy human rights and hard-nosed economics. It's simply not true. The idea that the only way we can make a living and create jobs at home is to engage with such a regime as this is completely false. Why aren't we rolling out the red carpet for India, a country where there is more opportunity and we don't have to make the kind of compromises involved in dealing with China? There's a further point, which is what's in the interest of our economy in the long term is a globalized, open world economy run according to the values that we share and the Chinese regime completely rejects. So that more that we give in to their way of doing things, the worse it gets for us in the long term economically. Never mind on the moral and human rights questions. This is actually bad economics.
All right, I know the other guests here will want to answer all this, but look, I'm interested in what you would actually have David Cameron, and you write speeches for him. You were here a couple of weeks ago helping write his conference speech. What you would actually have him say, he's sitting next to the Chinese president at dinner. What would you actually have? How would that conversation run?
Well, first of all, this is a conversation I have had with the Prime Minister and with the Chancellor over many years. They know exactly how I feel about this, so none of this should be a surprise to them. And I always argued that actually the first thing is not to do the kinds of things that we're doing today, to really signal clearly that we have a different priority. In fact, I explicitly argued, and as I do today, that we should prioritize our relationship, our economic relationship with India, because that's where the opportunity is. Given that we are here today in this situation, I think that we have to be much tougher. I would think that we should consider sanctions on China, not rolling out the red carpet.
What, sanctions on China?
Sanctions on China, exactly, just as here in America, a few weeks ago, that was the agenda with President Obama in his meeting with the Chinese president, directly in response to the cyber attacks. Now, one thing that's interesting about that is that the day before and the day after, the Chinese president sat down with President Obama and face-to-face told him that the cyber attacks would stop. The very next day, we've just seen a report Chinese hackers were attacking American companies. That's the kind of regime that we're dealing with here.